Hey everybody, welcome back.
I walked into holiday brunch with my kids. My dad said, "It was a beautiful day, why did these losers come?" My son got scared. I said, "We're leaving, dear." The laughter continued in the room, but that evening I made my dad regret his words. I hate my parents. Not in a childish, rebellious way. Not because they grounded me or didn't buy me concert tickets when I was 16. I hate them because they've spent most of my life making sure I knew I wasn't good enough for them. I was tolerated at best. At worst, ignored. Mocked. Blamed. But the part that stings most is how they've treated my son, their own grandson, like a stain on the family they can't scrub out. They never wanted me to keep Jacob. I was 22, barely getting through school and dating a man they hated before they even met him. He didn't last. When Jacob was a year old, he walked out and my parents decided that both of us were just reminders of a mistake. They never said it out loud, but I saw it in the way they looked at him, with that cold, passing glance that never lingered long enough to feel like love. Meanwhile, my younger sister Rachel could do no wrong. Married, 2 kids, a new SUV every couple of years, a husband with a LinkedIn profile full of titles no one understands but everyone respects. Family gatherings were just Rachel's victory laps, and we were always the side exhibit. The tired single mom with her quiet son and cheerful daughter who still hadn't figured out the script. But every year I tried. For the kids. Because I didn't want them to grow up knowing the same silence I did. So we went to the holiday brunch. It was Christmas Eve. The sky was clear. I even let myself feel hopeful for a second walking up the steps to the house. My house technically, but we'll get to that. Jacob was holding Emily's hand, both of them wearing the sweaters I'd stayed up late to finish sewing their names onto. We walked through the front door and no more than 5 seconds later my dad, already half lit on whatever was in his mug, glanced at us and said, "It was a beautiful day. Why did these losers come?" Then laughter. My mom laughed. Rachel snorted. Her husband chuckled like he was trying not to but just couldn't help it. Even one of Rachel's kids laughed, and that's when Jacob's face changed. He didn't cry. He didn't ask what Grandpa meant. He just stared at the floor like he'd expected it. I said, "We're leaving, dear." No one stopped us. No one even asked where we were going. We drove back in silence. I put the kids in front of a movie and sat in my room with a folder I hadn't opened in over a year. Inside, my grandmother's will. Nana Rose. The only person in that family who ever treated me like I mattered. She left the house to me. Not to her daughter, not to the family unit, not to be shared. Just me. But I let them stay. Because they were the majority. As I thought, maybe they'd come around. That night I started typing. Not a letter. Not a text. A formal notice. I'd been the outsider long enough. Now they were going to know what it felt like to be unwelcome. Because this time when I said we were leaving, I meant all of us. Except they wouldn't be coming with me. By the morning of December 26th, I had everything printed. 3 crisp copies of a 60-day notice to vacate. I slit them into envelopes, sealed them, and left them on the dining table of my house before heading back to the apartment I was renting with the kids. My name was on the deed. Their names were nowhere. My grandmother made sure of that. Let me explain. After my grandfather died, Nana Rose started making changes. Quietly, privately. She called me over one afternoon when Jacob was still in diapers, made me tea and asked if anyone in the family ever made me feel small. I remember being too embarrassed to answer. She already knew. Her eyes were always sharper than people gave her credit for. She told me the house would be mine one day. I thought she meant metaphorically, like, "You'll always have a place here." But no, she meant mine. She even said it with that little smirk of hers, like she was daring me to use it when the time was right. So when she passed and the will was read, no one said a word in front of me. But I noticed how quickly they moved in. My parents, Rachel, her family, they packed up her things like looters after a storm, settled into the master bedroom, and acted like it was understood they'd be living there permanently. I didn't fight it. I was raising 2 kids alone and barely affording rent. I thought maybe the house would bring us closer again. I thought maybe this was a fresh start. Instead they used it to freeze me out. Till now. 2 days after Christmas I got the first phone call. My mother. No greeting. What is this? Some kind of joke? I told her it wasn't. I told her they had 60 days to vacate. The paperwork was legally sound. Nana Rose's will was filed and recognized. The lawyer's name was at the bottom. They could verify it if they wanted. She started yelling but I ended the call. I knew what came next. Rachel would call. Then my dad. Then some cousin with a law degree they barely use would try to sound threatening over email. I had already sent everything to my lawyer, the same one who handled the estate. His response. "You're within your rights. Be prepared for the guilt games." Guilt games. He was right. The next week was a circus. Rachel sent me long texts about disrupting the lives of innocent children. My dad left a voicemail calling me a snake. My mom sent a screenshot of her browsing Zillow with a message that said, "Is this what you wanted?" Oh, what I wanted was one decent holiday. One moment where my son wasn't humiliated just for existing. Instead, I got laughed at in a house that was technically mine. Now they were panicking, watching their golden world shake beneath them, watching me become the storm they thought I'd never be strong enough to bring. And I wasn't even done yet. I thought I'd seen the worst of them. After years of cold shoulders, fake smiles, backhanded comments, and straight-up exclusion, I thought I'd gotten used to how low they could go. But nothing prepared me for the letter I got in early January. A real legal threat. Not from a stranger, not from some scammer. From a law firm my parents had actually hired. They were suing me. Not just challenging the eviction notice. They were trying to invalidate my inheritance. My mother, father, and Rachel all co-signed an affidavit claiming I misled my grandmother during the final years of her life, that I manipulated her into cutting them out of the will. Their argument was that the house had always functioned as a multigenerational property, and that removing them would cause significant personal and financial hardship. And just like that, they tried to turn me into the villain. I should have panicked, but instead I smiled. Because I had been waiting for this moment for years. They thought I was weak, that I'd back down. But I had something they didn't. Evidence. Every conversation I had with Nana Rose, every letter she wrote, every holiday card where she told me how proud she was of me and how disappointed she was in how the others treated me, I had kept it all. Not to use against anyone, but because I'd clung to those words like a life raft during some of the worst years of my life. Even better, my lawyer. He'd been Nana Rose's lawyer too. He had updated her will personally. He remembered her clarity, her intentions, her stubbornness. And he told me something I hadn't known. 3 months before she passed, Nana Rose had quietly added a conditional clause. If any of the family members tried to dispute the will or interfere with the sale or use of the house, they would be immediately disinherited from the rest of her estate. That included a savings account she'd set aside, a collection of antique jewelry Rachel had been eyeing for years, and the family lake cabin in Vermont that no one ever talks about, because Nana didn't want them to know she still owned it. Well, now they'd know. And they'd lose it all. I didn't say anything. I let them sweat. I let their lawyer send another email full of bravado and hollow threats. Then I had my attorney send back a single-page response, citing the clause and formally revoking their right to claim anything further from Nana's estate. That same night, I called a real estate agent I trusted and told her I was ready. We met at the house 2 days later while my parents were out and Rachel was at work. She was stunned by the size and potential of the place. I didn't list it publicly. I wanted privacy. Quiet interest only. No signs. No showings unless I approved it. She understood completely. But here's the twist, I already had a buyer. A friend of Nana Rose's from church. A retired widow who'd always admired the house and wanted to downsize with her son and his wife. She told me years ago that if I ever decided to sell, she'd be interested. I'd stayed in touch. She made a cash offer within 4 days. $350,000. I accepted. I hadn't told anyone yet. My family still thought this was just a power move, that I was bluffing, looking for attention. That changed the moment Rachel showed up at my apartment, uninvited. She banged on the door for 5 minutes, yelling, texting, demanding I come out. I didn't. I watched her through the peephole, arms crossed, her face red. She eventually stopped knocking and sent me a single text. "You wouldn't actually sell our childhood home." I didn't reply, as I already had. And the closing date was in 3 weeks. It happened on a Thursday. A regular weekday. The kind of day people go to work thinking their lives are predictable, stable. That morning my dad was on the porch reading the paper. My mom was inside folding laundry. Rachel had just dropped her kids off at school and stopped by to pick up something she'd left the day before. Everything looked normal. Until 2 cars pulled up. The first belonged to my lawyer. The second was the buyer's, Nora, my grandmother's old friend, and her son Marcus. He's the one who'll be living there with his wife and baby. The 3 of them stepped out of the car in nice clothes, holding folders and copies of signed documents. Nora even brought a welcome mat. I hadn't asked her to, it was just her way of being kind. She didn't know how poetic that would end up being. When my father stood up and saw them, he looked confused. Then he saw me step out of my lawyer's car. His confusion turned fast. "What's going on?" I didn't answer. I let my lawyer hand over the official transfer documents. The sale was final. The house was no longer in my name. It belonged to Nora and her son. My lawyer had also included a letter stating that the 60-day notice had passed, and because they hadn't vacated, they were now unlawfully occupying someone else's private property. They had 7 days left to leave before formal eviction proceedings began. Rachel came storming out when she saw the strangers on the porch. Her eyes scanned the papers in Nora's hands, then the welcome mat leaning against the doorway. She didn't speak. She couldn't. My mother tried to say it wasn't legal, that there had to be some mistake, that they had a right to know, to contest, to stop it. But it was done. They'd wasted their time attacking me in court instead of protecting what little they still had. They spent weeks pretending I was bluffing, writing emails, sending threats, accusing me of betrayal, and all the while I was finishing the sale. They thought I was just bitter. They forgot I was also smart. That night I got the email I'd been waiting for. Rachel's husband had contacted a realtor. They were looking for rentals. Not houses. Not condos. Apartments. They'd finally realized they weren't buying anything anytime soon. And the cherry on top? 2 days later I got a voicemail from my dad. For the first time in years he didn't sound angry. He sounded tired. Quiet. He asked if I could at least give them $50,000 from the house sale. Just enough to help cover rent while they figured things out. Just a gesture of good faith. I sat with that voicemail for a while. Then I transferred $5,000. No note. No explanation. Just enough for a few months. Just enough for them to sit with it. It was never about revenge. Not at first. But actions have consequences. And they never imagined a world where the outsider they laughed at would be the one holding the keys. I never stepped foot in that house again. After Nora and her son moved in, it wasn't mine anymore. Not just legally but emotionally. My attachment to it had been gone for a long time. The only thing keeping me connected was the fantasy that somehow if I stayed long enough, if I kept showing up with the kids, something would change. But all that ever did was hurt Jacob. A few days after the sale closed, Nora texted me a photo of the living room. She'd painted the walls a soft sage green, moved in a few pieces of antique furniture, and hung a photo of her late husband above the fireplace. Her little grandson was sitting on the carpet, surrounded by toys. She added a note that just said, "It already feels like love lives here again." That one sentence made my throat close. It was the house where I'd grown up hearing slammed doors and sarcastic laughter. The house where my father's jokes always had sharp edges, and where my mother acted like motherhood was a burden she'd agreed to out of guilt. The house where Rachel was crowned their prize before she could even walk, and I was the one they never figured out what to do with. And somehow the same walls now made someone else feel safe. I was happy for Nora. But I didn't reply. I didn't want to open that door again. Instead I got to work. The next week I called my landlord, broke my lease and started packing. It wasn't even a question. I had no reason to stay in that city. No job tying me down, no extended family I wanted to see again, no neighbors whose names I even knew. What I did have was a bank account that finally didn't make me hold my breath. I'd walked away from the house with $345,000 after fees. I'd kept it quiet, told no one except my lawyer. And I'd already made a decision. I was moving closer to the water. I'd always dreamed of it. Somewhere peaceful with salt in the air and a view of the horizon. Not a beach town swarming with tourists. Just a quiet coastal place where I could wake up without tension crawling across my skin. I found a small house in a town I'd only ever driven through once years ago. 3 bedrooms, a sunny little backyard, a porch swing, and a white fence that looked like it came out of a painting. The kind of house I would have laughed at ever being able to afford. I paid for it in full. The day I told Jacob and Emily we were moving, Jacob didn't say much. He just asked if the new place would be ours for real. I told him yes. He asked if Grandma and Grandpa would visit. I told him no. He paused for a second, then said, "Good. I think I like quiet more." We moved in March. It was still chilly in the mornings, but the sun came in warm through the windows by afternoon. The kids picked their rooms and unpacked boxes with a kind of excitement I hadn't seen in them in a long time. The first night I sat on the back porch with a glass of wine and listened to the ocean in the distance. There were no voices upstairs, no footsteps pacing the hall, no one watching me from across the room judging. It was quiet, and I finally knew what peace felt like. As for them, I haven't heard a word. No calls. No thank you for the $5,000. Not even a petty message. Rachel listed a few things for sale online. I recognized them as items from the house. Guess they're downsizing. Good. I hope they learn to live with less. Less space, less control, less of everything they thought they deserved by default. Because they gambled their security just to laugh at an 8-year-old. I always thought that when it ended, there would be a dramatic final scene. Screaming. Tears. Maybe even some confession or apology, some last-minute attempt at love. But no. That kind of closure is for people who had something real to begin with. For me, the end came in silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels earned. The last communication I ever got from any of them came in the form of a group email. Sent by Rachel, of course. She always liked to make herself the spokesperson for things, like she'd been elected family captain. It was brief. She wrote about wanting to move forward, reconnect, keep the family unit strong for the kids. No mention of what had happened. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they did to Jacob. No ownership of the fact that they mocked an 8-year-old and tried to gaslight me into giving up what my grandmother entrusted to me. But then came the real reason for the message. They wanted money. Not just a few $100s. Not even a polite request. They wanted $50,000 as a gesture of goodwill. To help them secure a new rental, pay a few off-season bills and stabilize their future. Rachel framed it like this would be a sign that I didn't hold grudges. That I was above it all. That I still loved them. She didn't say those words, but that was the tone. It was always the tone. The way she could spit in your face and smile while she did it. I didn't respond. I transferred $5,000 to my parents' joint account. The one I knew they'd still been using. No note. No context. That money wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't peace. It was a closing fee. And after that I was done. I deleted the email. I blocked every number. I called the bank and had the old accounts closed. I changed my number 2 weeks later, made it private and gave it only to the people I trusted. Which surprisingly wasn't many. When you grow up being manipulated by the people closest to you, trust becomes something you protect like an heirloom. Something you don't just hand out anymore. The move to the coast changed more than just my surroundings. It changed how I woke up. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up dreading what message I'd see on my phone, what family event I wasn't invited to, what side comment Rachel would make in the group chat just to remind me I was the outsider. Instead, I woke up to light through the window. The sound of gulls somewhere in the distance. Jacob asking if we could go down to the dock. Emily in the kitchen, already unpacking cereal boxes like she'd always belonged there. And slowly I started becoming someone I hadn't been in years. Not a version of myself that was performing or apologizing or bracing for impact. Just me. I got a job managing a boutique downtown. A little shop that sells handmade goods and local crafts. The owner is a single mom like me. We talk about books and school pickups and which candles actually help you fall asleep. I started saving again. Not for survival but for the future. College. Maybe a trip. I even bought a kayak, something Nana Rose used to talk about doing. She never got the chance. So I took it out on the water one Saturday morning. The sky was blue and cloudless. The bay was calm. And I cried. Not because I was sad. Not because I missed them. But because I finally felt what she must have hoped I would. Freedom. She didn't just leave me that house. She left me a choice. I could stay in the system of cruelty and favoritism that broke me over and over. Or I could leave finally and build something new, something honest. I left. I built a life where my kids don't flinch when they hear laughter. Where holidays don't feel like a test. Where I no longer keep score because there's no one left to fight for scraps from. They still exist somewhere. Probably still talking about me, still bitter, still thinking I overreacted. That's fine. Let them rot in that version of the story they tell themselves to feel better. I've moved on. I have peace now. A small house with a white fence. A fridge filled with groceries I didn't have to count coins to buy. 2 kids who know they are deeply, unquestionably loved. And a porch that faces the sunset. I sit out there sometimes at dusk, watching the sky change, listening to the water in the distance. And I think this is what family feels like. Quiet. Whole. Safe. Whole. Safe. Whole. Safe.
Oh, so chunky, so chunky. Wait, please tell me that there's a part 2. What was that? You know, I love my friends, but it doesn't mean that I would trust them with my haircut. POV, your most expensive moisturizer shatters, but you're not a quitter. Wait, but there's glass in there, babe.
This is some real embarrassing, and I need to deal with it. And I will deal with it.
Not the magic cream.
I just cannot believe this is happening right now.
I mean, that might not have glass in it, but there is a high probability that that could have glass in it. Now you will for realsies have glass skin. I'm sorry. That was one of your ones. You know what? You're such a critic, you know? Like, you just come in here and you just criticize me all the time. I'm just trying to make you better. Well, you're not. You're making me insecure. I'd be insecure too if I looked like that. You do look like that. You literally look like me. In her defense, Charlotte's magic cream is some good. Like, it's worth every penny, in my opinion. I really love it. Obviously, there's great moisturizers out there, but that stuff, magic in a bottle or a glass container. Oh, we've got a male beauty fail. Beauty is not synonymous with femininity, friends. Oh, I hate these. Oh, I hate these so much.
I don't think it's ready.
It's ready?
Yeah, it might be ready.
Go for it, sister.
Ah! Oh no! Oh, that one hurt. That yeah, for sure. No going back. You know what? I love to see it. I love to see some men involving themselves in the beauty community, because the fact